I still remember the night the fog came down the mountain. It wasn't the quiet kind. It hummed low and steady like the forest itself was breathing. My cabin sat right at the edge of an old dirt path, one that locals swore led to a forgotten village buried in moss and time. I never believed them. Not really. I thought it was just one of those stories people told to keep children from wandering too far at dusk. But that night, something changed. The lights flickered, once, twice, and the hum grew louder. I stepped outside and the world felt different. The trees leaned closer, as if listening. There was a pale glow deeper in the fog, moving slowly, deliberately. The sound of my own breathing seemed too loud. Then I noticed something strange. Footprints leading away from my cabin. Bare, human, and fresh. I followed them only a few steps before the silence broke. A soft voice whispered my name from the fog. That's when I saw it. The morning air was still. Frost clung to the edges of my cabin's roof, fragile and trembling. I stepped outside. The forest felt quiet, almost expectant. Every branch held a pause, every shadow a small hesitation. And then I saw it, a path, where there had been nothing yesterday. Soft earth pressed into the moss, winding into the trees. I hadn't noticed it before. Or maybe it hadn't been there. I touched the bark of the nearest tree. It shivered beneath my fingers. Or perhaps it was my own skin, suddenly aware of cold and tremor. I followed the path a little. Fog wrapped around my ankles, curling up like smoke from a dying fire. The air smelled damp, earthy, like the forest had exhaled while I wasn't looking. Soft rustling came from the underbrush. I froze. Leaves whispered together, then fell silent. I told myself it was just wind, but the wind didn't pause when I stopped. The deeper I went, the lighter it grew. A pale lantern hung on a crooked branch at the path's end. It flickered, gentle, almost alive. I stopped. The light hummed quietly. Warmth brushed my cheek, though the fog was cold. And then a voice, soft, called my name. I stepped closer. Mist curled around my boots, slippery, almost hesitant. The forest seemed to lean in, breath held. I tried to see the source. Nothing moved, but the hum from the lantern pulsed, like something was listening, waiting. I leaned toward it. My hand brushed the lantern's metal. It vibrated, faint. The air thickened, heavy, almost tasting like old smoke. The voice whispered again. Closer now. I couldn't tell if it came from the trees, the fog, or the path itself. It knew me. It remembered me. I wanted to step back. My feet would not obey. The path behind me had blurred, twisting where I had just walked. I looked down. Leaves rearranged themselves. Patterns I had never seen, but somehow familiar, like memories made of soil and shadow. Soft footsteps followed. Not mine. I didn't turn. The silence thickened between them. I could feel the weight of eyes, though nothing visible moved. The lantern's flame wavered, bending toward me as though reaching. I realized then it wasn't just light. It was aware. I had been expected. A sudden cold brushed my shoulder. I flinched, breath catching. Then a shadow passed, low and slow, hugging the edges of the fog. A figure, or the suggestion of one, lingered there. I wanted to speak. The words caught in my throat, soft as a fog. I could only move forward, compelled. The forest shifted again, branches leaning closer, whispering my name in a rhythm I could feel in my bones. Finally, I reached the lantern. It hung silent, still but alive. The hum had softened to a vibration in my chest. I sensed a presence behind it, watching, waiting, remembering. And then the path behind me vanished. The mist swallowed the forest. The only light left was the lantern's pale glow. I stood alone, yet not alone. A soft breeze brushed my ear, and I understood without seeing that the path would always remember me. I stepped back slowly, the fog closing around my feet. Rustling, quiet footsteps, a hum, then silence. I didn't turn again. I only walked. The radio crackled softly. Static hummed in the dark kitchen, warm against my skin. I hadn't turned it on, yet there it was, whispering through the night. A voice, faint, almost melodic, describing a village. Nearby, it said, close enough to find. But nothing I had on any map looked familiar. I touched the dial. The hum lingered on my fingertips. There was dust in the air, or maybe the smell was from old wires. The voice repeated, softer this time, naming streets that didn't exist. Curiosity pulled me out the door. The night was cool, fog curling around the edges of the road. I walked slowly, breath puffing white in the dim light. Leaves rustled without wind, brushing my legs, brushing me awake. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. The radios hum pressed against my chest, guiding me. I tried to remember every landmark, but the road twisted differently each step, and then I saw shapes, faint outlines, houses pressed low to ground, half hidden under vines and moss. I blinked, and the fog shifted, revealing pale lights flickering behind windows. Warmth radiated from inside, though the air outside was cold. I stepped closer. The ground smelled of damp earth and old wood. The walls of the houses were cracked, leaning, almost breathing with age. Soft footsteps echoed somewhere behind me. I turned, but the path was empty. The lights pulsed slowly, like they knew I was watching. The voice on the radio whispered again, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. I reached the first house. The door was slightly open. I could see furniture draped in shadows. Something stirred. A curtain shifted, though no wind moved it. I didn't enter. I only watched. The air tasted faintly of smoke and herbs, though no chimney smoked. Every window glowed, but no one appeared. The village was alive, or remembering life it had lost. I walked past, stepping carefully over the soft moss underfoot. The outlines of more homes appeared, some smaller, some half-collapsed. Vines clung to roofs, trembling with every step I took. The fog wrapped around me like a blanket, warm and unnerving. The radio hummed again, louder now. A voice spoke of streets I could see, naming them, describing them, as though it existed in both sound and sight. I pressed the receiver to my ear. I wanted to confirm what I saw, but it only repeated the words I had just witnessed. I felt a presence behind one of the larger houses. Not threatening, but aware. I turned slowly, but the shadow vanished into the fog. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, as if nothing had happened. I realized then, the village was not gone. It was hidden, living somewhere between breath and shadow. The radio had found it, and now, somehow, so had I. I walked back to the edge of the clearing. The outlines of the homes faded into the mist. I carried the warmth of the lights in my chest, heavy and impossible to shake. The static lingered, whispering faintly as I turned the dial. No one would believe this village existed. I wouldn't even believe it if I weren't standing where it once had, or still did. But the scent of moss and old would follow me home. And the hum never left. The forest was quiet that morning. Mist hugged the ground, curling around roots and fallen leaves. The air smelled damp, heavy with soil and decay. I found the well by accident. It had been dry for years, stone cracked, moss clinging to the edges. Yet something drew me close. A faint drip echoed from inside. Slow, deliberate. The sound shouldn't have been there. I leaned over the edge. The stone was cold beneath my hands. My breath rose in fog, mingling with the damp smell of the earth. And then I heard it, a voice, soft, whispering from the depths, calling my name. I stepped back, heart tightening, but curiosity held me. I knelt and peered again. Water shimmered, though the well was meant to be dry. Drips fell, pale and slow, each one stretching the silence. Then movement, my reflection, in the dark surface. It smiled. I didn't. I waved. The reflection waved back. A slow, careful mirror of my motion. But then it didn't stop. I froze. The reflection kept waving, fingers curling and uncurling, a rhythm I had not chosen. My pulse throbbed in my ears, the forest holding its breath around me. The air smelled colder now, damp, earthy, with a hint of something metallic. Soft footsteps, though I was alone. Leaves whispered as if leaning closer to watch. I touched the edge of the well. The stone vibrated under my fingertips, subtle but insistent. A hum rose from the depths, faint but alive. The reflection tilted its head, watching me, waiting. I tried to look away. Couldn't. Eyes locked on mine. Every movement I made mirrored except for the waving, which continued. The drip changed rhythm. Quicker now, irregular, echoing like a heartbeat. I stepped back, cold seeping into my bones. But the reflection remained. I whispered, almost to myself. The voice from the well repeated my words, softer, hollow. It wasn't mine. It never had been. The mist thickened around the trees. Shadows stretched, pale and restless. Leaves brushed my arms as I turned, unsure where the forest ended and the well began. Every sound from the woods seemed magnified, quiet and intimate at once. I knelt again. The surface rippled, not with water, but with breath. The reflection, it moved differently now. A slow grin, wider than mine, edges fading into the dark. I stepped back completely. Stone scraped my palm, cold and rough. The drip slowed. The hum softened, curling into silence. And yet, I could feel it. Watching, waiting, mimicking, remembering. I left the well. Soft footsteps carried me through the mist. Branches whispered, brushing my face as I went. The air still smelled of damp earth, old stone and faint metal. At the edge of the forest, I dared one last glance. The well seemed empty, still, but I could feel the waving fingers, still moving, somewhere deep beneath the surface. I didn't look back again. The echo followed me, quiet, insistent, as I walked away. And in the hollow of the forest, the well waited. The forest smelled damp, like moss and old rain. Twilight clung to the treetops, soft and gray. I walked slowly, careful not to disturb the hush around me. Then I saw him, a man moving through the trees, carrying lanterns. Hundreds of them, pale light bobbing, flickering, filling the fog. I stopped. The lanterns hummed quietly, warm against my skin. Each one glowed as though breathing. The hum pulsed softly, like a heartbeat I could feel. He turned his head, pale eyes catching mine. No words, only the quiet shuffle of his footsteps. He moved slowly, reverent, as though each light held a fragile life. I followed, drawn by something I couldn't name. The fog wrapped around my ankles, cool and damp. Leaves brushed my arms softly, whispering against my skin. Every step felt heavier, every breath closer to silence. He stopped in a small clearing. Lanterns spilled over the ground, clustered together, hundreds of tiny lights. The glow touched the trees, casting shadows that leaned closer, watching. He lifted one lantern gently, held it to his chest. His voice came then, low and calm. It belongs to someone who forgot their name. I looked closer at the lanterns. Faces, faint and shifting, trapped in the flickering light. Soft, sad eyes turning toward me, some aware, some lost. I took a step back and froze. One lantern pulsed differently, brighter, warmer. It was mine. The hum rose, insistent now, inside my chest. I touched the lantern. A weight settled in my hands, heavy and familiar. A breath, soft, almost a whisper, as though I remembered. The man nodded, almost unseen beneath the shadows of the trees. No fear, only acceptance. He lifted another lantern, careful, reverent. I keep them, he said, voice low, for those who drift too far, for those who cannot remember. I knelt slowly. The fog swirled, brushing my cheeks and neck. Warm light wrapped around my fingers. The air smelled faintly of smoke and old wood and something lost. The lantern's glow shifted. I saw memories I couldn't name, faces I couldn't place, laughter and sorrow tangled together. A pulse, a rhythm, like a life remembered in fragments. I realized then I belonged here, too, not in the forest, not walking beside him, but here, in the quiet hum of lanterns, in the suspended weight of names forgotten. The man stepped back, letting me linger. Soft footsteps brushed the leaves as he moved into shadow. The fog wrapped tighter around the clearing, holding me in the pale light. I stayed, unable to look away. The lantern hummed against my chest. Alone but not alone. 1,000 small lights glimmered in the mist, each one waiting, breathing, remembering. The forest exhaled around me. Leaves shifted, wind paused, shadows leaned closer. I understood then. Some losses are never meant to be found, only carried. I let the lantern rest against my hands. The glow warmed me, soft and sorrowful. I took a breath, and the hum became my own, but I did not leave. I could not, and perhaps I did not want to. The night was still. Fog rolled low across the ground, curling around the crumbling edges of the village. The air smelled damp and faintly of rot. I found the house at the far edge, ruined, half swallowed by vines, would blackened with age. The windows were cracked. Spidering across the glass like frozen veins, the soft hum floated from inside. Low, steady, almost breathing. It pressed against my chest, quiet but insistent. I touched the glass. Cold, rough under my fingertips, that a pulse ran through it, small and alive. And then the whispers began, names soft and broken. Dates I did not know, memories I had never lived. They slipped into my mind like fog curling around trees. I stepped back, breath catching. The hum grew, vibrating to the board beneath my hands. The air smelled older now, dust, smoke, and something metallic. I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing to the cracked windows. I reached out again, fingertips brushing the jagged edges. The whispers rose, layered, folding over themselves. Laughter, tears, arguments I had never heard, all threading together. I tried to pull my hand away. It didn't feel like mine anymore. The memories clung, mixing with my own, impossible to separate. A shadow shifted behind the glass. I froze, not a person, but a suggestion, a movement caught in fog and light. The hum pulsed with it, as though acknowledging my presence. The whispers became clearer, insistent. A child's birthday, a funeral, names repeated again and again, each one pressing through my skull, soft but undeniable. I tasted dust and cold wood in my mouth, as if inhaling the house itself. I stepped closer, trembling. The windows seemed to breathe under my touch. Cracks widened imperceptibly, light bending through in pale strips. The whispers swirled around me, soft footsteps circling, brushing my ankles and cheeks. I tried to speak, but no sound came. The voices filled the space my words should have occupied. They named people I never met. They recalled events I could not have known. And yet, part of me felt them as my own. The hum softened, receding into silence. The fog thickened, curling around my legs, holding me in place. The shadows leaned closer to broken frames, pressing through the cracks. The house seemed to inhale, drawing me nearer. I touched the glass one last time. The whispers whispered themselves into me, settling there, quiet now, but permanent. Names, dates, memories, woven into the fabric of my mind. I stepped back, shivering. The air smelled faintly of smoke and wet earth. The hum was gone, but the weight of the house remained. The shadows inside did not move, but I could feel them. I walked away slowly. Branches brushed my face, fog curling up to meet me. The cracked windows remained, pale and silent, yet the whispers lingered in my head, soft and unrelenting, as if the house had followed me. I did not turn back. I could not. And somewhere beneath the broken glass, the hum waits, patient, breathing, remembering. The night was heavy with fog. It rolled low across the forest floor, damp against my skin. The air smelled of wet pine and earth, thick and quiet. The radio sat on the ground, static humming faintly. I hadn't touched it yet, just watched. A chorus rose from the white noise, soft, layered, and impossible. I leaned closer. The static shifted, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Leaves rustled somewhere above, brushing together like soft footsteps. A hum threaded through the air, warm against my ears. I slowed the recording. The chorus stretched, unraveling into voices. Ancient, deep, chanting something I could not understand. The fog seemed to bend toward the sound, curling closer around my ankles. I touched the radio, cold metal against my fingers, rough and vibrating faintly. The hum grew, brushing my chest and neck. Every shadow leaned closer, almost listening. The voices changed, slow now, deliberate. The chant threaded with syllables I recognized, my name. A shiver ran down my spine. I tried to step back. The fog clung to my legs, soft and heavy. Branches tapped lightly against each other, whispering, moving, watching. The voices repeated my name, calm but insistent. I crouched to record. The static hummed beneath my fingers, alive. The chant twisted, layering over itself, over me, under me. I could feel it crawling into my chest, into the space behind my eyes. The forest seemed to breathe with the rhythm. Leaves shivered. Shadows pulsed. The hum vibrated through my teeth, in my bones, around my ears. Soft footsteps brushed the fog behind me, never touching, always near. I tried to stop the recording. Buttons pressed under trembling fingers. The static didn't fade. The voices grew, folded my name into the chant again and again. The air tasted metallic. My breath caught in my throat. I felt cold fingers tracing my spine, though the fog was empty. The radio hummed, pulsed, whispered, repeating, remembering. I stumbled backward, soft footsteps chasing me in the mist. The voices layered into a chorus now. My name, my heartbeat, my name again. Every tree leaned closer. Every shadow reached farther. I pressed record again, hoping to capture it, to understand it. The hum tightened around me, threading through the fog, curling around my lungs. I could not move, not speak. I only listened. The chant slowed. The voices breathed with me, whisper my name in turns, soft and patient. And then silence. Only the fog remained, curling at my ankles. Leaves whispered faintly above. The forest exhaled around me, heavy and still. I touched the radio one last time. Cold, solid, unchanging. The hum lingered faintly, deep under the static, waiting. I stepped away slowly. Soft footsteps carried me through the mist. Shadows bent closer as I passed. Pale and still, the voices were gone, but the echo of my name lingered, beneath breath, beneath hum, beneath the fog. I did not look back. I could not. The choir waits. And someday it will call again. The church stood empty. Vines curled up the stone walls, brushing against cracked windows. Dust hung in the air, thick and faintly sweet. I pushed open the heavy door. It groaned, the echo lingering like a soft breath. The wooden pews were splintered, shadows leaning across the floor. On a table near the altar lay a photo album, leather-worn, edges frayed, smelling faintly of mildew and old paper. I opened it slowly. The first pages held faces I didn't recognize. Children, elders, families long gone. Each photograph caught a frozen moment. Pale light pressed into smiles and eyes. I flipped a page and froze. A figure stood at the altar decades ago. A man or a woman, looking exactly like me. The edges of the photo curled under my fingers. I could feel the cold, dry paper, the faint hum of old ink. The smell of dust rose into my nose, metallic and earthy. I leaned closer. The image trembled in the flickering light. The altar behind them crumbled, yet their face was vivid, impossibly familiar. I turned the page. Another scene. Same figure, same face, always present. The church alive then, full of voices I could not hear, laughter and prayer frozen into grainy stillness. A breeze drifted through a cracked window. It stirred the pages, the air smelling faintly of wet stone and old wood. I shivered. The figure's eyes, they seemed to look straight at me, across decades. Across the room, I pressed my hand to photo, cold and rough, but the weight felt heavier than paper should be. A quiet hum threaded beneath my ribs, soft but insistent. I stepped back. The room tilted slightly, shadows bending toward the altar. Rustling whispers pressed against my ears, names I couldn't recall, prayers I had never spoken. I opened another page. My breath caught. There I was again, standing beside the altar. Only it wasn't me. Not yet or not anymore. The album trembled under my fingers, a faint warmth pulsed on the page, subtle, alive. The smell of old smoke, wax, and dust filled my lungs. I could feel the church exhaling, watching, remembering that I closed the book slowly. The air felt heavier, the silence louder. Soft footsteps, or perhaps the memory of them, brushed the floor around me. I wanted to deny it, to say it was coincidence, a trick of shadows and time. But the echo of that face lingered, in the pages, in my mind, a reflection older than memory, anchored in a past I had no part of, yet somehow did. I laid the album back on the table. The leather whispered as it settled, quiet, patient. The altar remained, worn and still, and the church exhaled around me. I did not look back as I left. I carried the weight of the photographs with me, a soft, impossible hum beneath my chest. And the face followed, unseen, whispering to the edges of my vision, through the folds of memory. I stepped outside. The fog clung to ground, curling around my ankles. The church receded behind me, silent, but remembering. And I realized some moments are never truly forgotten. They wait, quiet, patient. The evening air was cold. Fog rolled in low across the path behind my cabin. The smell of damp leaves clung to my clothes. I noticed it first in the reflection of the window. A second shadow lingered behind mine, slower, hesitant. It didn't belong to anything visible. Each night it followed me, learning my movements, copying softly, almost politely. Rustling leaves echoed its pace, a quiet mirror of my steps. I stopped once, mid-path. My shadow froze. The second one hesitated, paused. A breath passed through the fog. I tried to ignore it, pretended it was imagination, a trick of light and mist. But the hum of the forest changed around it, responding. Some nights, I felt its presence on my skin, cold, almost breath-like, brushing my neck, my shoulder. It mimicked my stance, my sway, even my pauses. And yet it was not me. One night I turned slowly. It moved differently. I hadn't moved, and yet it stepped forward, deliberate. The fog swirled around it, pulling closer, curious. My chest tightened. The air smelled colder, metallic, pressed against my lungs. Branches whispered together above, though no wind moved them. Shadows stretched, leaning toward the second shadow. I walked faster, footsteps soft against wet leaves. It followed, copying, keeping pace. But then it pulled ahead, gliding over roots and moss with an ease I did not know. I stopped completely. The forest stilled. Even the fog seemed to pause, curling around us like a cage. The shadow waited, hovering, patient, aware. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. The mist wrapped around my ankles, damp and heavy. A hum rose from the ground, faint but insistent. The shadow tilted, bending toward me, learning still, observing. I wanted to speak. No words came. The second shadow stretched taller, thinner, darker than mine. It was mine, and yet not mine. I stepped back slowly. The fog brushed my cheek. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. Some mine, some not. The shadow moved when I did not. Stepping closer, curious, deliberate. The air tasted faintly of wet earth and cold stone. Rustling leaves whispered secrets I could not understand. I reached toward it. It didn't flinch. Its edges trembled, pale and fluid in the dim light. I took a slow breath. The second shadow mimicked the motion, but then it leaned closer, independent now, watching me, waiting for something I could not name. I walked away. Branches whispered across my face. Fog coiled around my ankles, holding, soft, patient. The shadow followed, always close, always learning. At the edge of the clearing, I dared one glance back. It lingered, still hesitant, still mimicking, yet alive in ways shadows should not be. The forest exhaled around me. Leaves shifted softly, shadows pulsing in response. I did not stop again. I did not look back. And I understood quietly. It was patient. It was learning. And one day, it might not wait for me to move at all. The chapel was quiet. Evening fog curled around the stone walls, thick and damp. The air smelled faintly of smoke and old wood. I noticed a loose floorboard near the altar. Dust clung to my fingers as I lifted it. A dark stairway descended below, narrow and cold. I stepped down slowly. The stone walls pressed against my shoulders. The air was cooler, earthy, smelling of damp soil and mildew. Soft echoes followed me, tiny, deliberate. At the bottom, the cellar stretched wider than I expected. Hundreds of wooden carvings filled the space, each one shaped like a sleeping villager, smooth faces pale in dim light. I knelt beside them. Coal wood pressed against my fingertips. Dust swirled faintly in the stale air, brushing my arms. The carvings were arranged carefully, almost reverently, in rows that seemed endless. I breathed slowly. A faint hum rose from the wood, soft and almost imperceptible. The air tasted faintly metallic, like old iron and earth. Each figure's face looked peaceful and impossible to distinguish from the next. I walked among them. Rustling footsteps echoed softly against stone. My reflection shifted in the polished wood surfaces. Something in the shadows shifted too deliberate to be imagination. Then I noticed it. One of the carvings moved, a subtle rise and fall, like breath pressing against the chest of a sleeping body. The smallest motion, yet impossible to ignore. I froze. The hum grew slightly, threading through the cellar, curling around my spine. The scent of damp earth and carved pine thickened. Shadows leaned closer, pressing along the walls as if they remembered. I knelt, closer now, hand hovering above the figure. Its chest rose again, slow and steady, in rhythm with my own heartbeat. Eyes closed, still, but alive in some impossible way. I stepped back, cold pressing into my legs and hands. The rows of carvings stretched endlessly, all pale faces staring, waiting. I could feel the weight of centuries pressing in. The hum became breath, soft and patient. Echoing in the cellar, I reached for another figure. Nothing. Still, only the first. Only that one breathed. The rest remained suspended in quiet, frozen vigil. I stumbled backward, fingers brushing rough stone. A soft scrape echoed from somewhere deep in the shadows. The cellar seemed to exhale around me, cold and alive. Air smelled of dust, wood, and something faintly sweet, like old memory. I knelt again beside the breathing figure. The rise and fall was hypnotic. My chest mirrored its rhythm, slow and deliberate. The hum threaded through my ears, through the walls, through the floorboards above. I realized then I was not alone, not in the sense of bodies, but in the weight of attention. Something watched from every corner, patient, still, waiting for breath to still or move. I left the cellar slowly. Dust rose around me, curling in pale streams through the dim light. The loose floorboards settled back into place with a soft click. The hum lingered faintly insistent below my feet. Outside, the chapel was quiet again. Fog rolled around my ankles, soft and patient. The carvings remained beneath the floor, some sleeping, one alive. And I could still feel the rhythm of its breath, echoing beneath stone and shadow. I did not return. I could not. The silence below waits. Patient, endless. The night was still. Fog rolled over the rooftops, curling around chimneys and lampposts. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and smoke. I heard it first at exactly 3:11. A single bell, distant but clear. It seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The sound lingered, soft and insistent. My chest tightened with anticipation, breath catching in my throat. Leaves rustled faintly, brushing against my legs as I stepped forward. I followed the bell through empty streets. Shadows leaned across the cobblestones, stretching long and thin. The fog curled around my ankles, damp and patient. Each step echoed quietly, swallowed quickly by silence. It told again, a slow, deliberate sound, vibrating through the air. I paused, listening. The forest and the village held their breath with me. I turned a corner. The steeple of the old chapel rose above the fog. Pale light kissed the stone edges, soft and cold. No one was there. I climbed the steps slowly, hand brushing rough stone. Each movement was deliberate, careful, as though the night itself held me back. Rustling above, faint but constant, like whispers or shifting cloth. The bell tolled again, closer now, yet still impossibly distant. The rope swayed gently, unmoved by wind. The swing of it mirrored a heartbeat I could feel beneath my ribs. I reached the empty belfry. The bell hung, silent now. The rope moved slightly, as though pushed by invisible fingers. The air smelled faintly metallic and damp wood. I reached out toward it. Cold stone under my fingers, rough and unyielding. The rope swayed once more, deliberate, patient. A hum threaded through the silence, low and persistent. I stepped back. Shadows leaned closer, stretching across the walls of the steeple. The fog pressed against my legs, curling higher, closer. Every rustle of leaves below sounded amplified, intimate, watching. I listened. The bell would toll again at 3:11. It always did. A single note, precise, echoing across the empty village. I understood then. It was not a sound I could chase, not a movement I could follow. It was here and everywhere. The rope swung gently, endlessly. The belfry breathed around me, patient, silent, alive in ways I could not touch. And I realized quietly, some things call only to remind you, not to answer, not to move, only to wait. I stepped down. Fog curled around my ankles, soft and deliberate. The bell had not tolled again yet. It would, and I would hear it, every night, every 3:11, alone. The evening fog rolled thick across the hills. The air smelled of wet leaves and pine, damp and heavy. Branches scraped softly against each other in the quiet. The old hunter's cabin was small, smelling of smoke and dry wood. He warned me, voice low and rasping, never speak the village's name aloud. He said it carried a weight, a shadow that followed sound. I nodded. Curiosity lingered, a quiet hum in my chest. I could feel the walls around me, which swollen with age, listening. Night came, soft and thick. I lay in bed, fog curling against the window pane, cold pressing my skin. The silence seemed absolute, and then a whisper. My name first, almost, but not mine. Then it shifted. The walls breathed, murmuring something I had never spoken aloud. I felt it coil around my ankles, pressing, patient. I tried to close my eyes. The whispering grew, threading through floorboards, through the ceiling, through the gaps in the walls. It smelled faintly of smoke and wet earth. I could feel a presence, patient, circling, learning the sound of my fear. I remembered the hunter's warning, the village's name. I had never said it aloud, and yet the walls did. I rolled onto my side, breath shallow. The whispers layered, repeating, echoing. Shadows shifted in the corners of the room. The hum of the wood beneath me seemed alive. Curiosity flared. I whispered at once, softly, defiant. The walls paused. Then they took it up, murmuring, stretching it across the night. It pressed against my ears, my chest, my eyes. I touched the wall, cold, damp, alive somehow. The whispers swirled around my fingers, through the grain, through the knots in the wood. I could feel the hum beneath, insistent and patient. I wanted to leave, feet cold on the floor, hands trembling. But the walls shifted closer, bending with the fog that seeped under the door. The village's name echoed, soft but unyielding. I whispered it again. The room pulsed with it. Soft footsteps pressed against the walls, brushing shadows across the ceiling. The air thickened with metallic tang, the scent of wet soil and old wood pressing against me. I tried to cover my ears. The whispering continued, patient, deliberate. The walls remembered every syllable, every breath I had taken in defiance. Hours passed. Time stretched thin, fog curling higher, pressing into my hair, my neck, my chest. The hum became a heartbeat, slow and constant. I felt the village everywhere, patient, watching, repeating. I curled into myself. The whispers softened only slightly, never ceasing. I realized then, defiance had a cost. Even silence could not erase it. Morning came, pale and quiet. The fog retreated slowly, leaving only the weight of memory. The walls were still, patient, empty, or pretending to be. But the name lingered, soft and impossible to forget. I did not speak it again. I could not. And I understood, some things only remember what you try to forget. They wait, patient, echoing, beneath the walls, beneath your breath. The hunter's warning pressed against my mind. The village is never silent, and I am never alone. The fog lay thick across the forest. Branches dripped with moisture, brushing my skin with cold fingers. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and pine resin. I noticed them first. Small lights drifting silently between the trees. Orbs, pale and floating, like fireflies in a dream. They moved with a soft grace, pausing, drifting closer, watching that I stepped forward slowly. The ground was soft beneath my feet, wet with fallen leaves. Each orb pulsed gently, rhythm matching the beat of my chest. A hum rose faintly in the fog, almost imperceptible. They followed me as I walked, curving around trunks, brushing against mist, never touching. I could feel their presence in the air, a pressure soft and constant. The forest seemed to lean toward them, listening, watching that I reached the edge of clearing. Orbs gathered more densely, hovering, pulsing with quiet rhythm. The fog wrapped around my ankles, curling higher, pressing gently. Each pulse pressed against my ribs, subtle, insistent, hypnotic. I looked up. Shadows moved with the lights, stretching long in the dim, pale haze. The air smelled faintly metallic, a mix of wet soil and pine, sharp against my tongue. Leaves whispered above, brushing each other softly. In time with the orbs, I walked home, the orbs following, hovering around the path, guiding. Windows of my cabin glimmered faintly ahead. They gathered there, pulsing softly, reflecting against the glass. A gentle warmth rose from them, pressing against the cold of the night. I touched the window. Cold glass, damp from the fog. The orbs pulsed faster, in rhythm with my heartbeat. A soft hum filled the air, threading through the room, through my chest. I stepped back. They shifted slightly, hovering, patient, observing. Shadows of trees stretched across the walls, bending, leaning, soft and alive. The hum lingered, pressing into my ears, my skin, my awareness. I watched them pulse. Their light was pale, calm, almost tender. Yet the rhythm, it mirrored more than my heart. It mirrored my own breath, my own presence, in ways I could not ignore. I breathed slowly, matching the rhythm. The orbs responded, pulsing gently, softly, like a dialogue I could not speak. The fog pressed around my ankles, curling closer, patient, protective, and observant. I stayed at the window, quiet. The lights pulsed with each heartbeat, soft, patient, unblinking. The forest whispered faintly beyond the glass, shadows rustling with gentle intent. The room smelled faintly of fog and pine, a lingering echo of the night. I lay down finally, keeping the window in sight. The orbs gathered there calm, pulsing slowly, reflecting my breathing. Shadows shifted softly with their light. The hum beneath them lingered, patient, quiet, ever present. Sleep came, slow and shallow. The lights pressed close, a gentle rhythm against the window pane. The fog curled beyond, silent, undisturbed. And I realized quietly they would follow. Always. Soft, pale, patient. Waiting. The field stretched wide, pale and still. Dead grass pressed against my boots, brittle and dry. Fog rolled low, soft and thick, smelling faintly of damp earth. I saw it there first. A mirror standing alone, silver-framed and untouched. The glass reflected nothing at first, only the gray sky and curling fog. A hum rose faintly through the air, almost imperceptible, brushing my ears. I stepped closer. The ground whispered beneath my feet, dry and brittle. The fog parted slightly, curling around my ankles as though alive. I could feel a pulse in the air, subtle, rhythmic. Looking into the mirror, the world shifted. The fog peeled away, revealing streets I had never walked. Houses, old and worn, stood silent but alive, chimneys curling smoke softly. Shadows moved behind windows, and the hum deepened into a steady breath. I leaned closer, hand brushing the cool frame. Cold metal pressed against my fingers, slick with dew. The village stretched endlessly in the reflection, every detail vivid, impossible. A breeze carried the faint scent with smoke and wet stone. Then I noticed it. Something moved within the mirror, separate from the scene. A shadow, pale and still, waiting, eyes fixed on me. It blinked, and I felt the fog curl tighter around my chest. I stepped back. The hum rose, threading through my skin, pressing against my ribs. Dead grass rustled beneath me, brittle, fragile. The air tasted faintly metallic, like rain on stone. Curiosity pressed me forward again. I touched the glass. The reflection shimmered, the village alive, stretching beyond the frame. But that figure remained motionless, staring, patient, aware. I pulled my hand back. Fog curled in thicker now, pressing against my hair, my neck, my shoulders. The mirror breathed softly, steady, quiet, and alive. The shadow inside did not move, except to watch, unblinking. I circled the mirror slowly. The field seemed endless, alone, silent. The hum lingered faintly beneath my feet. Inside the glass, inside me, every pulse of the reflection mirrored my own heartbeat. I stared again. The village shimmered, alive, flickering, impossible to reach. The shadows shifted slightly, leaning closer, patient, deliberate. My chest tightened with the weight of recognition. Some awareness that was not mine. I backed away slowly. Cold dew clung to my boots. The fog pressed thicker, curling, coiling, watching. The mirror stood there, still waiting, reflecting the impossible scene behind the mist. I could feel the shadows gaze on me. Patient, quiet. It remembered me as I remembered it. Echoing in the reflection, I left the field without turning. The fog wrapped around me, soft and insistent. The mirror remained, silver and cold, the village pulsing softly inside. And I knew, with a quiet certainty, that something inside had followed me. The hum lingered faintly in the fog. Dead grass whispered beneath the wind, and the shadow watched. The ground was soft beneath my feet. Fog curled low over the fields, damp and persistent. The air smelled faintly of earth and moss, rich and dark. At night, a hum rose from beneath the soil, soft, almost inaudible, brushing against my ears. It pressed gently against my chest, a pulse in the quiet. I knelt, fingers brushing the damp grass. The hum grew stronger, threading through my bones. A faint vibration lifted from the earth, humming beneath my touch. It was alive, patient, waiting. I dug slowly, nails scraping soil, wet and earthy. Cold dirt pressed against my palms, clinging, damp and dense. Stone surfaced, smooth and dark. The humming rose with them, vibrating through the stones into my hands. I listened. Each note shifted as I pressed closer. A melody changing subtly, delicate, impossible to name. It pressed against my ears, my chest, my awareness. Fog drifted across the field, curling higher, brushing my hair. I placed a stone in my palm. It thrummed gently, a heartbeat beneath my fingers. The hum became layered, harmonies rising and falling in quiet waves. I dug further. The soil loosened, soft and willing. More stones, each vibrating differently, each singing their own tone. The air smelled of damp earth and wet stone, alive with quiet music. Curiosity pressed me on. Each stone held a song, subtle and insistent. I pressed them together, the melodies twisting, bending into something larger. It vibrated through my chest, a warmth, a hum, a pulse I could not name. The fog thickened, wrapping around me, pressing soft and patient. I realized the songs shifted with each listen. No repetition, no pattern, only motion, alive and deliberate. Each vibration pressed against my ribs, each note of breath beneath the soil. I lay the stones in a circle. The hum rose into a resonance that vibrated across the field. Soft wind pressed against my face, carrying hints of metal and earth. Shadows of grass leaned in, trembling gently with the melody. The song grew delicate, terrifying, beautiful. It seemed to know me, pressing into my chest, threading through my bones. I could feel my heartbeat echoed in the vibrations, a harmony I did not control. The stones thrummed together, alive beneath my palms, whispering beneath the fog. I stepped back. The field pulsed with the song, low and constant, winding through the soil. Fog curled around my ankles, pressing higher, patient, waiting. I breathed slowly, matching the rhythm, feeling awe and dread mingled. I knelt once more. The stones hummed gently, a quiet conversation beneath my fingers. The melody shifted again, delicate, ungraspable, beautiful and alien. The hum threaded through the fog, through my awareness, through the earth itself. I stood finally, chest tight, breath shallow. The field was silent to others, only a quiet breeze brushing the grass. But beneath my feet, beneath the soil, the song remained, ever-changing. I walked home slowly, fog curling at my boots, cold and damp. The hum lingered faintly, pressing against my chest. The stone's melody followed, patient, quiet, impossible to forget, and I realized softly, with awe and dread, the song never ended. It waited beneath the soil, alive, patient, calling. The valley was quiet, stretched wide beneath a pale evening sky. Mist curled through the trees, heavy and damp against my skin. The air smelled of cold pine and wet soil, earthy and sharp. I looked up. The stars had vanished. The sky was an empty black canvas, vast and unbroken. A hush pressed against the valley, soft, patient, impossible to ignore. The forest glowed faintly, pale outlines shifting between trunks. I could see movement where stars should have been, shadows leaning, twisting, brushing the fog. Something ancient whispered to the branches, brushing hair and skin. I stepped forward slowly. The ground was soft beneath my boots, soaked with mist. Leaves rustled quietly, trembling in rhythm with the unseen. A faint hum rose, subtle and insistent, pressing against my chest. The outlines moved closer, pale, fragile, almost like drifting smoke shaped like creatures I could not name. They flowed around the trees, brushing against bark, echoing through the fog. I could feel them in the air, in the damp against my cheeks, in the whispering wind. I held my breath. The forest seemed alive, aware of me, waiting, patient. Shadows stretched long, bending where light should not reach. The hum deepened, threading through the fog, the trees, and beneath my feet. Curiosity pressed me forward. Each step brought me closer to the outlines, closer to the pulse of the forest. The fog curled higher around my ankles, soft and deliberate. A faint metallic scent brushed my tongue, carried on the cold wind. I paused in the clearing. The outlines swirled together, moving with slow grace. Branches scraped softly overhead, brushing against the skyless night. The air hummed, vibrating faintly, a melody without rhythm or pattern. I reached a tree, cold bark pressing against my palms. The outlines brushed past me, gentle, patient, alive. I could feel their presence pressing into the fog, shaping it, guiding it. The hum rose subtly, threading through my chest, unrelenting but soft. I looked back up. The sky was still black, empty, endless. No stars, no familiar light, only the forest, pulsing softly, moving, waiting. I breathed slowly, tried to match the rhythm of the unseen. The outlines shifted, folding into themselves, curling in slow patterns. Shadows leaned close, brushing my arms, pressing against my clothes. The mist smelled faintly of cold stone, of wet earth, alive and patient. I stepped back, heart slow, chest tight. The forest hummed, shadows flowing with silent intent. The valley remained black above, the night unbroken. I realized quietly that some lights had vanished, and some would never return. I turned toward home. The fog clung to my boots, to my sleeves, brushing cold along my neck. The outlines lingered at the edges of the clearing, patient, unblinking. The hum followed, soft, insistent, impossible to forget. By the time I reached the cabin, pale dawn pressed faintly at the horizon. The stars had not returned. The forest remained alive in shadow, in pulse, in hum. And I understood quietly that some nights hold shapes the sky cannot contain. The valley waited, the forest watched, and the stars remained gone. The morning fog clung to the cabin, soft and damp. The wood beneath my feet creaked faintly with every step. Air smelled of wet pine and earth. Thick and still, I noticed the letters first. Stacked neatly at the door, edges yellowed and curled. Postmarked 1911. Ink faded, almost brittle, pressed into the paper like whispers of another time. I bent to pick one up. The paper smelled faintly of dust and candle smoke. My fingers trembled lightly, brushing the delicate edges. The writing described tomorrow, events I had not yet seen. I set it down, heart slow, breath shallow. The fog pressed closer against the window, curling with patience. I opened another. Each letter spoke in the same calm certainty, predicting small actions, mundane moments, and some that made my chest tighten. I carried them inside, stacking them on the table. Paper whispered under my fingers, brittle, alive. The light from the window fell pale and thin across the ink lines. The air smelled faintly of old wood and ink, heavy with quiet. I read another, hesitating. It described a walk I would take, a sound I would hear, even the hum of the wind. Words pressed against my awareness, familiar yet impossible. I could hear faint rustling outside, as if the fog itself leaned closer to listen. Disbelief pressed lightly, soft but insistent. How could paper from a century ago know the rhythm of my day? The letters moved under my fingers, shifting slightly as I read. edges curling as though alive. The hum of the fog seemed to echo the words, threading through the room. I paused at one, predicting a sound I had not yet heard. Outside, the wind shifted. Branches scraped against the cabin like soft fingers. A shadow passed a window. I set the letters down, chest tightening. The air hummed faintly, thick with anticipation, with quiet, patient warning. I could feel the ink words pressing against the edges of reality, bending it subtly, slowly. Night fell with a slow breath, pressing fog against the windows. I read the final letter by candlelight. It predicted this quiet, this isolation, even the faint tapping against the walls. The hum of anticipation pressed closer, threaded with a rhythm I could not name. I laid the letters down, feeling them vibrate faintly under my palms. The wind whispered outside, rustling the edges of the pages. The air smelled faintly of old paper and wet wood. I moved to the window. Fog pressed against the glass, curling softly, waiting. Shadows stretched long across the cabin, patient and still. I felt the letters' gaze following me, watching, calm and inevitable. I left them on the table. Their predictions were patient, insistent. The candle flickered faintly. I could hear the hum of the fog, the rustle of the past brushing against my awareness. Tomorrow would come, as they said. I would live it, unaware that it had already been written. The letters waited, and I understood quietly that some messages from the past never truly fade. The fog pressed closer. The cabin remained silent, and yet alive. The letters, patient, still, watching. The stream ran quiet beneath the morning fog. Water curved round stones, cold and clear, brushing my ankles. The smell of wet moss and mud pressed gently into my nose. I knelt by the bank. A shimmer caught my eye beneath the running water. An old wooden door lay flat on the stream bed, darkened and swollen with age. The current tugged gently at its edges, slow and deliberate. I reached down, fingers brushing the water. The wood was smooth, yet alive beneath my touch. It hummed faintly, a vibration that threaded through my palm and up my arm. I froze, listening to the quiet resonance echoing through the stones. A pause followed. The stream whispered past me, soft and patient. I could feel a subtle rhythm beneath the hum, like a heartbeat pressed under the river. My breath fogged in the cool morning air. Curiosity pressed me forward. I pressed my palm against the wood, deeper, seeking its pulse. The hum strengthened, resonant, insistent. Something tapped. Light knocks muffled beneath the water. They came slow, deliberate, echoing faintly through the stream bed. The smell of wet wood and stone grew sharper, earthy and strange. I drew back slightly, heart thudding, fingers still touching the door's damp surface. The hum shifted. It pulsed with awareness, responding to my hand, to my presence. Another knock followed, harder this time. The current rippled around my wrist, cool and insistent. I knelt fully, leaning close. Water dripped from my hair, cold against my neck. The door hummed louder, vibrating through the stream, through my palms, into my chest. The knocks became uneven, urgent. A shadow seemed to press beneath the water, dark and formless. I could feel its presence, patient, waiting, pressing against the wood. The hum threaded through the stones, through the moss, through my bones. I could almost smell it, damp, dark, something older than the earth itself. I withdrew my hand. The knock stopped. The hum faded to a soft whisper. The stream flowed past, cold and empty once more. I stared at the door, lying silent beneath the water. It seemed to breathe with a calm patience, waiting for another touch. I could see ripples shift across its surface, subtle, deliberate. The forest around me was quiet, patient, watching. Mist curled around the trunks, soft against my skin. I could hear the distant hum of the world beyond, faint and insistent, like the memory of sound in a dream. I rose slowly, leaving the door behind. The stream pressed gently at my boots, cool and aware. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and stone, lingering like a question unanswered. I walked back toward the cabin, chest tightening with soft, quiet dread. The door remained beneath the water, patient, waiting for someone to touch it again, waiting for the knock from the other side. Fog lay heavy over the fields, pale and drifting. Each blade of grass glistened with dew, cold against my fingers. The air smelled damp, earthy, quiet except for the soft hum of distant wind. Shapes moved in the mist. Figures, pale and indistinct, bending over invisible crops. Their hands brushed the air, silent, careful. I could see the soft outline of shoulders, the curve of heads lowered in quiet work. I stepped closer, boots pressing into wet soil. Mist curled around my legs, cool and slow. They did not notice. I could feel the hush of their presence pressing lightly against my chest. The silence stretched. I moved another step. The figures shifted slightly, rhythmic, calm. A faint scent of old leaves and rain followed them, drifting across the field. Curiosity nudged me. I whispered a greeting, voice small and cautious. The air seemed to pause. The hands of all the silhouettes froze mid-motion. Their heads lifted slowly. One by one they turned. The mist swirled, clinging to them like breath. Eyes I could not see seemed to fix on me, patient, unyielding. The soft hum of the field became sharper, vibrating through the wet ground. I froze. The smell of damp earth grew heavy in my nose, almost pressing into my chest. Their movement or stillness pressed against the edges of the air. I could hear nothing but the pulse of my own heartbeat, slow and loud. The figures remained silent, watching. A breeze passed, carrying the faint scent of smoke and something older, long buried. The pale outlines of the fields rippled in the fog, shifting around them like water. I stepped back. The mist curled around my ankles, tentative, as if reluctant to let me leave. The silhouettes remained, patient, tending to invisible rows I could not see. The world felt thinner here, edges softening under their calm presence. I whispered another word. It was enough. Every shape turned at once. The field exhaled with their attention, cold and absolute. The hum vibrated under my feet, through my chest, threading the air with quiet dread. I could smell the wet grass and old leaves sharper now. Each step away felt heavier, pulled by something patient and unseen. The silhouettes returned to their work, slow and deliberate, shadows bending to the invisible soil. I did not look back. The fog pressed at my shoulders as I walked, soft, knowing, patient. The hum lingered faintly, winding through the air like breath beneath the mist. I felt it in my bones, the quiet certainty that they never left. By the edge of the field, I paused. Mist curled around the trees, soft, pale, unblinking. The air smelled of rain, soil, and lingering shadows. I could still feel their gaze, patient, waiting. I stepped forward again, leaving the field behind. And yet, I knew the silhouettes remained, bending over invisible crops, silent, eternal, the ones who never left. The night pressed cold against the cabin walls. Frost clung to the edges of the window, soft and pale. I could smell damp wood and the faint tang of smoke drifting from the stove. It started with a condensation, a thin haze curling along the glass, silent, slow. And then the smile, small at first, soft, curve, impossibly perfect, drawn from the inside, though I had not touched it. I pressed my palm to the cold glass. Nothing. The air felt heavier, thick with quiet. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, whispering over frozen leaves. The smile lingered, patient, watching. I didn't sleep. I traced the glass with my fingertips. The curve remained unchanged, undisturbed. A faint hum rose from the corners of the room. Breath I could not place. Night after night it returned, sometimes smaller, sometimes wider, stretching across the window pane. Each time the cold deepened. Each time the silence grew heavier, more deliberate. One night I noticed a shadow, faint at first, a dark shape, just beyond the frost, standing still, its edges blurred in the pale light of the moon. The smile had formed again, and now it had company. I could hear the night settling around me, the creak of the floorboards, the hush of the wind, the sharp smell of damp pine. The shadow did not move, but it was there, waiting. I could feel it in the press of the cold against my neck, in the pull of the silence across the room. I pressed my forehead to glass. The smile seemed to widen, impossibly alive. The shadow leaned closer, faint, hesitant. I could sense its shape shifting, learning, curious. Time slowed. The hum of the room vibrated softly in my ears. Breath misted against the glass. I did not speak. I could not. And then, almost imperceptibly, the shadow retreated. The smile lingered, fading only slightly, a pale curve in the cold. The wind stilled. The hum left, replaced by silence so deep it pressed against my chest. I stepped back. The air smelled of wet earth and old wood. The frost sparkled faintly in the moonlight. The room was still, the shadow gone. I did not sleep that night, nor the next, nor the one after. But the smile waits. It waits for the night, for the condensation to form, for the cold to gather along the edges of the glass, and for me to look again. The shadow will be there, always patient, always near. The forest was quiet. Fog clung to the undergrowth, soft and damp. The earth smelled of moss and old rain. I walked to the well. The stones were cold under my fingers. Dark water, stagnant, waiting. I leaned over the edge. At first, only shadow. A hollow emptiness. Then blinking. Eyes. Small, distant, reflecting the pale light of the moon. Not water. Not fish. Not anything I had seen before. I froze. The air felt heavier. Thick with breath I could not hear. A hum rose from the depths. Low. Steady, almost like a heartbeat. Closer now. The eyes blinked together, rhythmically, patiently. I could smell wet earth and something metallic, like blood hidden under roots. A shiver traced my spine. I wanted to step back, but my hand stayed pressed against the cold stone. The well called softly, whispered, "Come home." The words were many, yet one, all around me and inside me. The eyes pulsed, in unison, slow and knowing. I leaned over further. The fog from my breath mingled with the damp, with the hum, a soft ripple in the water. Though nothing should have moved, the eyes blinked again. Faster, urgent. I felt the forest close in, rustling leaves like static. Shadows stretched thin across the ground. The cold seeped through my bones. I wanted to leave, but a part of me leaned closer. Curiosity, a pull, something ancient and patient. The eyes multiplied, blinking from the depths, now countless. They knew me. They remembered me. I touched the stone, rough and damp. The whispering grew stronger. "Come home! Come home!" I could taste the cold, metallic tang of it on my tongue. The air vibrated. Time slowed. Breath held. The forest waited. I stepped back, shaking. The eyes blinked once more. Patient, unyielding. Silent invitation in each reflection. The night wrapped around me. The fog thickened. The hum faded into the mist. I could not forget them. Even now, I can feel them watching. From every well, every hollow, every shadow. Soft, steady, unrelenting. Waiting for the moment, I bend closer. I do not touch the stone again. Not yet, but I know. I will. The forest exhales around me. The eyes wait below. And something inside whispers, too. Come home. The air smelled of wet earth and sun-warmed stone. Mist lingered low across the fields. The morning was soft, pale, endless. I stepped outside. The dew clung to my shoes. Every leaf glowed with a strange, steady light. The sun had risen, but it did not set. The sky stretched forever in gentle gold. Birds moved slowly, their wings brushing air thick with warmth. The forest hummed quietly. Even the wind felt paused, holding its breath. I walked to the village. The streets were empty at first. Silent tiles, worn doors, the faint smell of smoke from long, cold chimneys. Then movement. Shadows stretched along walls. Windows reflected faces I almost remembered. The village was awake. People went about their routines. Slowly, carefully, but I felt out of sync. Their eyes glimmered with the same endless dawn, but not their minds. I stopped at the well. The water shimmered pale and steady. No ripple, no reflection, only the hum of something holding time itself. I turned. Every street corner, every archway held quiet watchers. The bakery, the fountain, the old church, alive but frozen in motion. The air vibrated faintly. A low, soft resonance I could feel behind my teeth. I touched the stone path. Cold, solid, Familiar, yet every step echoed differently. Not forward, not back, but suspended. I reached the square. Shadows moved like smoke. Faces smiled politely, but their eyes, too steady, too knowing, time had stopped. I felt like a weight in my chest, a sun that never sets, a world that glows in constant morning. I called softly. No answer, only the hum of static in the air. The village held its breath. I wandered. Familiar houses loomed, doorways yawning, empty, a soft rustle of leaves, a faint scent of bread, still warm, as if yesterday had never ended. I realized then, I was late, or maybe too early. The village had woken and I had not. Shadows lengthened without sun. The church bell remained silent, yet I could hear its echo. Soft footsteps, all around me, none touching the ground. I stopped in the center of the square. The world glowed with endless dawn. No warmth, no comfort, just the soft, steady light of a day that refused to end. I felt the pull of the village. Familiar and yet wrong. The doors, the streets, the eyes. They wanted me to stay, not forever, just long enough to forget the hours, the nights, the way the world had once been. I breathed in the pale air. It tasted of fog and memory. The hum inside my chest grew, soft, insistent. I understood then. The sun would rise, but it would never fall, and the village would always be awake. I walked on, feet brushing dew, hands trailing stone walls. Every sound stretched, every shadow waited. The world held its breath with me, and I was not alone. The endless morning whispered, a soft, static hum through the air, through the trees, through me, and I walked into the glow, into the day that never ended. The fog lay heavy over the trees. It seeped into the cabin's cracks, cold and damp, curling around the edges of the doorframe. Morning came slowly. The air tasted of wet pine and old smoke. I could hear the soft rustle of leaves, motionless yet restless. I went to the window. The glass was pale with condensation. Letters appeared. At first, just dates, scrawled in tiny droplets, trembling as if the fog itself was shaking. I pressed my hand to the glass. It felt colder than it should. A static hum ran along my fingertips. The next day, coordinates joined the dates, numbers curling, looping, fading with the breath of the morning. I traced them lightly with a finger. The fog outside shivered. I smelled wet soil, moss, and something iron-like. Every morning it changed. The script shifted, sometimes bold, sometimes faint, always precise, always deliberate. I began to watch the cabin. Windows mirrored my face back, but sometimes a reflection paused, and my eyes did not. They lingered a moment longer, watching me watch them. Then my name, written carefully, trembling, a handprint hovering in the fog. I froze. A soft intake of breath caught somewhere in my chest. The air thickened. The room smelled faintly of rain on stone. I touched the window. The print was wet, yet the condensation stayed. Cold, alive, silent. I drew my own hand beside it. It did not match. Never matched. Outside, the fog pressed closer. Every branch dripped moisture onto the roof. A subtle hum beneath it all. The wood seemed to bend inward, listening. I watched the letters fade slowly. The handprint lingering, refusing to vanish. I pressed my palm to the glass again. A whisper of warmth beneath my fingertips. Not mine. Days passed. The script grew bolder. Dates, coordinates, then a pause, and my name returned. Larger this time. Heavier, as if leaning into me through the glass. I stopped moving for hours, listening to the rustle of fog against the cabin walls, feeling the vibration in the floorboards, soft yet constant, breath fog in my own reflection, a static, soft hum in the silence. I tried to write in response, my own name on paper, but it blurred, letters dripping into nothing. The fog outside thickened, curling around the edges of the cabin, peering in. I began to leave the cabin later, hesitant footsteps pressing into wet earth, branches brushing my arms, the smell of moss and cold soil clinging to clothes. Yet every time I returned, the glass greeted me with the same trembling handprint, my name inside it. I stopped trying to erase it, stopped questioning. I let the fog cover me with its cold fingers. The hum followed, always following. Some mornings, I swear it moves. The letters shift slightly when I look away. Coordinates bending toward me. Dates inching closer, always closer. And the handprint. I no longer press my palm against it. I do not breathe into the glass. I do not trace the letters. I watch, and I wait for the fog to settle, for the air to hum softly, for the name to fade, though I know it will not. It lingers, always there, a cold, wet signature in the morning light. And I am still here, alone, watched, silent. The crossroads lay quiet beneath a fog that pressed against the trees. Damp soil clung to my boots. Every step left a small imprint, soon swallowed by mist. I first saw him at dusk, a tall figure, pale as bone, unmoving. The forest smelled of wet leaves and smoke from a distant fire. Each night I returned. The fog had grown thicker, curling around my legs, rising to my knees. His silhouette was closer, closer than the night before. I didn't move. I stood on the damp earth, feeling the static hum in the fog. It pressed into my ears, a low vibration that matched my heartbeat. Branches tapped against each other softly. The wind carried whispers I could not place. I tried to tell myself it was only the trees, but even the trees felt watched. The pale man did not speak. He did not shift, just waited. And every night the distance shrank. I noticed his eyes first, faint pinpricks of shadow beneath the pale face. They seemed to glow faintly through the fog. Cold, empty, hungry. I crouched once, touching the wet soil, tasting the earth, listening. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. But when I turned, there was nothing. Only him. Always him. I walked closer, careful, silent. The fog clung to my skin, heavy and wet. It smelled like iron and rain. The figure did not flinch, did not blink. The next night, he had moved again. A slow shift, almost imperceptible. Closer. The mist between us thickened, swallowing the path. I felt the air pulse. A quiet hum ran beneath my feet, rising from the soil. I could smell wet bark, the faint scent of moss decaying, and the figure, standing, waiting, became part of the fog itself. I called my name once, softly, a whisper that trembled through my chest. The fog swallowed it. He did not answer. Only the trees echoed, with rustling that was too deliberate. I stopped moving altogether, feet pressed into mud, hands trembling at my sides. The air seemed thicker now, more viscous. Each night, he grows closer. Each night, the crossroads disappears beneath the fog. I try to remember where the paths led, but memory is swallowed, erased by damp mist and pale light. I thought to leave. The fog pressed harder. Branches clawed at my jacket. The earth beneath my boots seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. And when I looked up, he was nearer. I can feel him, waiting. Every breath drawn in the mist carries his weight. The smell of cold stone and wet leaves clings to my lungs. There is no turning back, no retreat, only this place, only him. I stay at the crossroads now. The fog rises past my knees, past my waist. The pale man waits still, closer than ever. I breathe slowly, hear the faint hum vibrating through the ground. The trees whisper in rhythm, and I realize I am already part of the fog, already part of the stillness. The night stretches endlessly. Cold mist presses my face. Every step is swallowed, every sound absorbed. He waits, and I wait, the crossroads fading beneath the fog, the night pressing close. No path, no escape. The ruins were quiet at first. Fog curled over broken stone and fallen timbers. The morning air smelled faintly of wet earth and moss. I stepped onto the cracked path. Soft soil pressed underfoot, damp and uneven. The pale light trembled across collapsed doorways. Then I heard it, laughter, faint, fragile, echoing from empty homes. I froze. The sound was brittle, like dry leaves rustling. It shivered along the walls, brushing my ears. The wind stilled as though listening too. Footsteps followed the laughter. Slow, careful, not mine. They traced the dirt streets in patterns I could not follow. The fog shimmered. It moved with memory, rising, falling, shifting shapes. Shadows flickered where door frames used to stand. I could smell smoke and dust together, faint but sharp. I walked slowly. Every step pressed into silence, yet the echoes lingered. The houses seemed to breathe around me, inhaling, exhaling, and sometimes I thought I saw movement behind shattered windows. A wooden chair lay on its side, weathered and splintered. Soft laughter curled from it. I touched the backrest. It hummed under my fingers, faint and hollow. The fog grew thicker, curling into corners, past walls, through broken arches. Footsteps circled me, never closer, never retreating. I could hear my own breath, heavy, shallow, matching the rhythm of something unseen. I reached the square. A well stood half-collapsed, water still. The fog mirrored it, reflecting what was no longer there. A faint shimmer of light ran across the stones, like memory slipping through fingers. The laughter rose again, clearer now, tinged with something old and warm. And then the footsteps, soft, brushing the ground, invisible hands marking time. I turned slowly, eyes scanning ruined walls. I wanted to run, to leave the village behind. But every exit dissolved into mist. Every path was swallowed. A shadow moved past the doorway. Pale light reflected on something glassy. I leaned closer. A window, cracked and dusty, trembled slightly. The fog around it pulsed like a heartbeat. I breathed in deep, the scent of damp wood, of forgotten homes, of memories lingering. It filled me. I understood, finally, that this place was not empty, not entirely. I stepped onto the path again. The laughter and footsteps continued, distant, gentle, persistent. The fog shimmered and parted just enough to show the shapes of the old village. I no longer feared it. I no longer resisted. I moved slowly, letting the mist guide me. Each step felt like joining the echoes. The sun, pale and filtered through fog, washed the ruins in soft light. The stones hummed faintly underfoot, and I walked, shadow among shadows, whisper among whispers. The village was awake again, and so was I. Not quite the same, but not separate either. Silence settled around me, thick and soft. The laughter receded. Footsteps faded into fog. I breathed slowly. The ruins held me, and I accepted it. The fog shimmered. The village pulsed, and I became part of the echoes. The forest was quiet. Mist hung low over the clearing, heavy and soft. The ground smelled damp, of moss and rotting leaves. Lanterns flickered ahead. One by one, small flames ignited. Golden light spilled over fallen logs and pale grass. I stepped closer, each footfall muted in the fog. I noticed them all at once. Every lantern I had seen before, burning again as if waiting. The air thrummed with a faint, steady hum. The clearing stretched wide and still. Shadows leaned from trees, tall and thin. They moved only in the corners of my eyes. I felt the pulse of the forest through my chest. I touched the nearest lantern. Warmth pressed into my fingers. The flame shivered, alive and steady. I could smell wax, faint smoke, the earth beneath it all. A sudden realization came slowly. I had been speaking, telling stories. To no one. The village had never let me leave. Every step I thought I took outside was still here, in the mist, in the trees. Soft wind brushed my neck. A rustling moved across the clearing. The hum of lanterns swelled, surrounding me, and yet no one was near. I walked between them. Each lantern reflected another shadow, another memory. The fog bent light around them. I could feel the weight of time pressing softly, endlessly. I sat on a fallen log. The flames swayed and pulsed with breath-like rhythm. I could hear the faint scrape of leaves under my own hands. The forest held me completely. No footsteps approached. No eyes watched. Only the hum, the fire, and the fog. I realized the stories I whispered were echoes I had created. The clearing stretched wider, pale and calm. Lanterns burned steadily, golden and quiet. I felt the ground beneath me soften, alive with stillness. I breathed in slowly. The smoke, the earth, the cold night air, it filled me completely. The realization settled like dust. I would not leave. I had not left. And yet, that was no longer frightening. The lanterns flickered once more. Shadows leaned close, but did not touch. The fog pulsed gently, like a distant heartbeat. I whispered nothing. No one would answer. No one had ever answered. I rose, hands brushing dew-laden grass. The hum of the lanterns followed, a soft cadence in the eternal hush. The clearing held me, and I held the clearing. Light shadow mist, all one, all still. I sat again, calm, breathing in the lantern-lit night. No footsteps, no whispers, only eternal silence. The flames trembled once, small and warm, and I knew this was home. Always had been, always would be. I closed my eyes. The fog curled around me. Lanterns glowed softly, and the forest waited, patient, unending, silent.